The Wars of the Roses was an internal family power struggle between two opposing factions of the House of Plantagenet, the House of York versus the House of Lancaster. The House of York is symbolized by the white rose, the House of Lancaster, the red rose. Hence, the Wars of the Roses. However, when the Lancastrian married a person from the House of York, they became Tudors, and the Tudor rose is red and white. This War of the Roses lasted for 32 years, and it contained 8 major battles and a series of skirmishes, and it appears quite evident that black racial ethnicity was a great part of the animosity. In our previous video, we showed how the act that sparked the 100 Years' War was the greed of the black king Edward III pressing his claim to the throne of France. It's also important to note that I'm not making this about race, that the wars were themselves about race, and only when we understand the true racial identity of some of the characters does any of it make sense. We also see a pattern of a grim fate related to the black kings and queens of Plantagenet and Lancastrian blood, like Richard II, the grandson of Edward III, who was imprisoned in 1400, where he died. Upon the death of Richard II, and with much support from the lords of England, Henry Bolingbroke ascended to the throne as Henry IV, the first Lancastrian king of England. To understand clearly the black racial ethnicity of Henry IV, consider that his father, John of Gaunt, and his grandfather, Edward III, were both black men. Therefore, we have to understand that in the period after the 100 Years' War, all the way up to the end of the Wars of the Roses, England saw a succession of black kings, from Henry V, Henry VI, and Henry VII. And often we see where the original pictures of the aforementioned kings depict them to be much darker and to have much more kinkier hair than historians want us to know. Thanks to the eyewitness accounts of John Mackey, who served as a spy during the reigns of King William, Queen Anne, and George I, we see that people who were described in the nobility of Europe to be black are shown to be very white on Google. Nonetheless, the true Wars of the Roses lasted well beyond 32 years, and the Black Stuarts were right in the heart of the action. Henry Stuart was known as Lord Darnley. He was the cousin of and second husband of Mary, Queen of Scots. Although modern artists try their best to depict them to be white, from original images we can see that Lord Darnley and his wife were both black. Tragically, when their son was only 9 months old, Lord Darnley was lured to a cottage in Kirkhope Field where there was a gunpowder explosion. Lord Darnley was actually able to run from the cottage before the explosion, but was pursued thereafter by his conspirators and strangled to death. But the 9-month-old son he left behind would perhaps grow up to be one of the most popular Stuarts, James Stuart, or King James I. By now we should understand the pattern. A black man turns into a white man. King Henry VIII was another black man who turned into a white man, but it was the union between his father Henry VII and his mother Elizabeth of York that created the House of Tudor. Of this iconic painting of Henry VIII, an art critic once said that the artist had to, quote, invent a look, and it had nothing to do with reality, but it was altogether propaganda. Today, if you went to King Henry VIII's beloved Hampton Court Palace, you just may see remnants of the blacks in Tudor England.